Hi friends, Tessa here, the Colorist. Welcome back to my coloring corner. If you are new to my coloring corner and like this video, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Also, if you want to stay up to date on any new videos that I post, click the bell icon. So the reason why I want to make this video for you guys today is I want to talk to you guys about this technique that I've seen kind of floating around YouTube and Pinterest and Instagram and all of that stuff. It's where you take a Fineliner or any kind of fine tip marker and you outline your piece with that, and then you color it in with colored pencils. I did this with the Faber Castell colored pencils, and then I used before that I used the Staedtler Fineliners to outline this, and this is without any blending solution. This is with blending solution. So if you have watched and been a regular to my channel, I like to use the Winsor&Newton White Spirit. It is a great tool that I like to use with a little size 0 blending stump. So let's see. Okay. So I want to show you guys a little bit of the stuff that I used with the blending solution and without the blending solution up close. So this kind of red, orangey, pink one is with the blending solution, and it shows that it kind of, you don't see all the lines or the variation. It kind of blends the colored pencils together. And the reason why I use the blending solution is because the Faber Castell polychromo colored pencils are oil-based, not a wax-based, and they tend to work really well with this technique. I have another video that I have done before about kind of how I use the blending solution and kind of blend this into the page, and then I like to wait for that to dry for like a day or two, and then I come back and then I add more layers to this. This process with the blending solution, I add anywhere up to 3 to 10 different layers depending on the color and what I want to get in the kind of overall look that I want for the piece. This one here is just with the Staedtler Fineliners, and then I just kind of did a, let's see if it'll focus. It won't focus. I do the Staedtler Fineliners, and this one is not with any, you can see the lines right here, kind of how the colored pencil laid down on the page, where it doesn't, I didn't use any blending solution, and that kind of gives it a more kind of like a sketchy kind of feel, or more of like a quick kind of feel to this. I do also don't do as many layers. I do also use only about 3 to 4 different layers. First off, I do the outlining of the flower with the Fineliners, and what I did was a little bit, I took a darker Fineliner orange and I added it to this area here, and then I took a very lighter a lighter orange and I added it to the tips to kind of give it a little bit more kind of shadowy kind of thing effect. And I thought, and unfortunately it's not kind of really showing up in the video, but in real life it really looks really neat, and it's a really kind of cool kind of technique. Come and check out my stuff on Instagram. It's Tessa Murphy, the Artful Colorist, and you can come and find me there. And you can see the post that I posted for this video that I posted. Probably will be posting this video a couple days after I posted that. So go check that out and see, and let's get started. I want to kind of point out kind of the steps that I've used. Let's zoom out just a little bit. The steps that I used for this one is I took the Fineliner and I outlined it in the dark orange, and then I added the light orange to the tips, and then I took a light yellow and I just colored the whole thing with light yellow, and then I took a darker yellow and added some kind of contrast, and then also to add these shadows I added a blue. I took a light turquoise and then I did a darker turquoise to add, kind of give that a little bit more of a depth. And then in this one here, I did, instead of the Staedtler Fineliners, I used the Pentel Art colored markers, or they call them colored pens, but they also call them markers on the box. And I use that, and it's a little wider tipped. It's more of a kind of like a felt tipped marker for this outline. And then I added some red and pink kind of tones, and then for the shadows, to kind of really darken them a little bit more, I added some darker red, kind of a reddy magenta, dark red magenta, and then I added some blue to kind of give it a little bit more, kind of bring out that blue kind of highlights and kind of show the shadows, because most shadows are not just like the color of the object, they're actually more of a gray blue color. So let's get started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my outlines, and I'm going to use the Staedtler Fineliner. So what I want to do is I'm going to start at the bottom, and I want to kind of keep my pen as close to the page as I possibly, or the line as possibly can. And then I don't want to lift up. I just kind of want to do is evenly. These lines kind of, you don't have to be accurate, like 100% perfect, but I just like this because it kind of gives me a little bit of depth when I'm going around with the colored pencils. And if you can tell, like on this blue one here, I'll zoom in a little bit. You can't, the outlines kind of just enhance the piece, but they kind of start to like kind of fade into the colored pencils. So it's really nice to kind of do that. If you don't have perfect hand work, line work like I do, I'm not really good at lining. I used to be really good, but in the last few years, I just, not something I do all the time. So I just kind of, and I'm doing the same kind of thing, or I'm doing this thing where I will go closer to the body of the page, and I don't do most, I do some of the edges, but the tips of the flowers I'm going to do in a lighter color, and I like that kind of look. It kind of gives it a nice kind of like shadow and highlight on the top of the leaf or the petal of the flower. So let me wrap this up, and then when I come back I will have it all outlined, and then we'll work on the colored pencil part. So what I'm going to do now is going to do a light kind of color over with my lightest purple after I've done all the outlining, and I am adding the dark purple and the light kind of purpley pink color. I am then now going over that flower with a very, very light kind of layer of color, because I want to be able to not put too much pressure, just real light. Even if you miss some spots, it's not a big deal, because we will be adding more layers to this. This is just kind of initial kind of lay down of color, how I like to do it. So this is, and I go over the whole entire flower. I make sure that I at least get some color on each little leaf of the flower, and then I kind of go back and forth, and just, it's almost like a light little wash. And it's kind of like if you ever used watercolors in the past, where you kind of build up your colors and your intensity of color, and then you kind of go from there. And that's how I like to use this technique. This technique is a really kind of a neat technique. It's new kind of to me, because I've never really kind of showed this on my channel before, and I want to give credit. I saw this on coloring, kind of adapted this kind of style from a tutorial from Color with Sam or Sam's Tutorials. I'll have all the information in the description box below, so you guys can go check her channel out and kind of get some tips and understanding. She uses a lot more images that have a lot more shading, kind of color drawn into the piece of the color, so it does lend it to be a little bit more easier than using just a straight piece like I am, because then you can kind of get the where to put your highlights and your shadows, and it allows you to be able to, it's a little bit more easier kind of process to color on a piece like that, on a line art with the shadows already kind of built in. For me, it's just not something that I like doing, because I like having the control and the easeability of everything. So now that I did the light purple, I'm going to go back in and start doing a very light kind of pressure on kind of where the shadows are going to go and where I want it to be darker, and that's at the base of the flowers, the petals, around this area. And I kind of add some shadow here. I want to make sure that I get that, kind of figure out where my light source is. I tend to, if you're a follower of my channel and you've watched a lot of my videos, I tend to kind of not really have a main source of light, because I tend to kind of forget where my source of light is. That was one of my things that I need to work on, and that is something I am trying to work on, but it's not something that I always tend to necessarily follow. So I'm just kind of putting light pressure right now and just kind of going back and forth and just adding color, because I know that even if the strokes of the colored pencil look kind of messy and you can see the lines, if you're like me who like almost a smooth kind of transition that adds some color, and you don't like to see, you like to see it kind of a smooth gradient when you're coloring, then it will go away when you start to lay down more color and lay down more kind of the process of this kind of style. And you just kind of, I do circular motions or lines, like if I'm gonna go in between these like kind of little indentations of the lines of the flower petal, I kind of go with the flower petal or kind of pull towards myself, and I find that that's a good technique, or kind of go back and forth depending on where I'm at. And then when I start to add the shadows, I kind of go in a circular motion across all the leaves and that are connecting, and I go back and I kind of build that up. Okay, oh, off the screen. I'm trying to zoom in to a point where you guys can see kind of the motion that I'm making, this like kind of circular motion, this kind of like that kind of motion on the page, so like I can start to build up. And then when I want to kind of blend, and then see how these kind of are connected, so I kind of go across that and add that in. And then I kind of can do it here. And see how this is connected here in this flower, and then I kind of build up the layers. And I keep building and building. And then where this flower here, I know that this is going to be darker, so I kind of add a little bit more pressure as I go, and I kind of pull those shadows out and kind of deepen them, making sure that those shadows are darker than the tips of the leaves or the tips of the petals, and making sure that blends in. And see how like how not as smooth my line my outlining was. Once I start laying down colored pencils, that's kind of goes away, and it kind of blends in with the colored pencil, but it still does give you that nice rich kind of depth. And so that's how I do this technique. And then once I get to the point where I've added enough of this medium toned, and you can add as many tones as you want. I say do a rule of 3 where you have a light, medium, and a dark, and go from there if that's how you want to, if that's the only kind of colors you have in the color family and in your colored pencil set. And then if you want, then you can always add 5, 6, 7 different colors to kind of add to this, but always stay within like a light, medium, medium light, medium dark, dark, and you can kind of build up from there so that you can have this. And then I want to kind of do this little quick, I don't know if I'm on screen or not, but I keep adding this color, just kind of building up my way through and adding it to leave to the petals that I haven't added, and making sure that I'm getting this color down and making sure. And this is a really nice one if you're not used to like shading or doing that. You can kind of play around with this kind of style, because this style really does lend to the beginner or to somebody who's new to adult coloring and want to kind of build up their skills in this kind of art form of adding shading. And having like a flower or floral piece is really nice, because you can really build this up and can now, and you don't have to be too 100% accurate. You can kind of put some color down, and if you like it, then keep moving on to the next color. And now I've moved on to the dark purple, and I want to darken those kind of shadow area a little bit more. And I'm adding a little bit more pressure than I was with the lighter colors as I keep building. And I will go back and forth. I'll bounce back and forth between all these different colors. I will go from this dark color once I lay some of it down, and then I'll go back and I'll grab my medium color or my light color and kind of blend that out. And as I'm blending, I'm putting a little bit of pressure at the base, and then I'm lifting, and then till I'm barely touching the page. And that helps to kind of warm up the colored pencil at the bottom and blend those two together, and then kind of push it to the top. And I tend to like doing this kind of technique. I've done a couple things like this. And you can use some white spirit, the Winsor&Newton white spirit that I like, with a blending stump or with like a brush, or you can put it into one of those water brush pens and you can blend it out that way. The only trick with that is I do suggest that you do let that one, if you do blend it out for a little bit, do suggest to let it dry before you come back, like a couple hours, or even I tend to let it dry for more like 12 hours or overnight, so that it can have time to kind of evaporate and kind of dissipate from the page. Because I noticed that if I do keep it on there, the page tends to be a little bit more moist or like kind of slippery, and it does not want to take more color if you don't let it dry and kind of give it time to do that. If you're going to use like a blending kind of solution like a white spirit or a mineral spirit, that's only if you are using the Faber Castell polychromo colored pencils, because they're oil base, and it kind of does like if you're using oil paints, it does allow you to kind of blend out that oil, and it allows it to kind of give a nice depth to the page. And I did use a little bit of blending spirit on this one, and it does blend it out a little bit more, so you see less of your pencil strokes and less of the lines. But if you like that kind of like sketchy kind of colored pencil look where it's not like 100% smooth, like I know that with some of the polychromos, or not polychromos, the Prismacolor Premier colored pencils, those are a wax base, and they tend to not like, or the white spirits don't really work with them, and you kind of have to use the actual pencil to kind of blend out and get that smooth, and then do the light coloring and build up more layers that way. And I tend to find that you kind of have to build up more layers with the Prismacolor Premiers. They tend to need more kind of blending with the colored pencils, and so I find that with that I tend to use the colored pencils a little bit. I go faster with them because they're a softer colored pencil by a little bit than the polychromos. The polychromos tend to be a little bit harder because of the oil-based pencil, not the wax-based, where the wax-based tends to be a little softer pencil. I do have a cheap set of colored pencils that if you guys are interested, I can go and grab those and pull them out and do a review. I think they're like the Marana. I don't know. It's been so long since I've touched them, but they are supposedly a oil-based colored pencil like the polychromos, and I want to kind of do a review and kind of do a piece with you guys and sit down and do that. If you have any suggestions of any products that you guys want me to try out, let me know in the comment section below. I am always willing and open to new things. And if you guys notice when I'm coloring, I kind of tend to twist my pencil. It's because I want to make sure that I have like the most kind of pointed part of the pencil, and it helps keep the tip kind of nice and kind of sharp. So I'm going to add a contrasting color like this one here. I added like a turquoise to this one right here, and then I added I did this one with magenta, and then I added some orange highlights, kind of like, I don't know if you guys, let me see if I can zoom in. So see those orange? I used like a bright like neon or like a highlighter orange. Faber Castell, not Faber Castell, Staedtler. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but I always like to use it like a contrasting, like this one here is not really that contrasting. I added some purple to it to add to the highlights, and now what I'm going to do with this one is add some green, kind of see, because that's kind of a complementary color, and so I'm going to add that. I think that's going to look really cool, and I don't really need to have this perfect. I'm going to add it and then keep building upon it and bring it up a little bit, bring it into the shadows, bring it up. It kind of gives it a little bit more pop. You're not seeing kind of the depth of this. I will be doing some pictures on Instagram if you want to follow me there. If you want to get up to date on what I'm doing, unfortunately with the kids and my daughter turning almost 2 in March, it's like 6 months away. It's like, feels like she's just was born yesterday, and now it's been almost 2 years. It's like, it's crazy. What I'm doing is I'm adding this light green to the kind of the ends of the shadows to kind of add some color to that shadow. I thought that looks really cool. I don't know if you guys can see. I'll have pictures, I promise you that. So this is how I do this kind of style. If I want to, I can work on more of it and add more shadows and more shading. You could work on these kind of stuff for a long time, and I always never am satisfied, even when I'm done coloring something. But I always have to kind of put myself in a position and say, stop, you're done. So here is the overall piece so far with all of the different flowers, and let me know which one is your favorite one, the blue, yellow, pink, or purple. Thanks for watching. I'm Tessa, the Artful Colorist. Stay colorful.